I mean, I agree with you. I think it is as important now as it ever was, and maybe more so, to have stories like this.
Congratulations on Queer. I think it's entertaining, obviously, but also a really important film for our time. I think that queer storytelling is valuable and maybe more important than it has been in a long time right now. And I'd like to go to you first, Daniel, and ask you a little bit about what that means to you to be a part of this kind of storytelling that is, meaningful to LGBTQ plus people.
Well, it's a big conversation.
It really is. Yes.
But I don't know if I can do it justice in this short space of time. But Burroughs was a very complicated, messy, kind of wonderful artist, writer, and who was married and went through kind of all sorts of, was a junkie and represented queerness at a time when it was illegal, when it was all of these things, and I mean, I agree with you. I think it is as important now as it ever was, and maybe more so, to have stories like this. But I wouldn't have tackled it unless I thought I could emotionally dig into it and know what that was, and I recognized in him so much of myself and so much of what the human condition is, and I just thought that that's a conversation I can have. I mean, I can't obviously speak to how it really impacts the LGBTQ community, but I can have a conversation about well, he's a lonely, horny man. I can get into that, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, and you did that very well.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for that. Drew, I would love to chat with you a little bit about this relationship that Eugene has with Lee, because it's kind of on again, off again, and Eugene is not always into it, but clearly there's something abiding and loving, and there's something that he gets from this relationship with Lee. Would you touch on that?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly complicated. I think he's in a state of vulnerability that I think Lee's probably the first person in his life that's ever shown himself to himself in a way, and I think that's scary. But I also, it's also in a time where he may not have, or a lot of people, you don't have the language to associate these feelings, to externalize them in any way. He's, like in the film, he's disembodied. He's disconnected from himself. He doesn't know how to put it together. But yes, I think there's something deep in both of these people. With Lee, he's showing it to him, but Allerton, I think, doesn't have the mechanisms to allow himself to show it. But there's still some type of gravitational force that's pulling him towards Lee in a way, and at times he leans into it, and at times he keeps it at arm's length.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And then, Daniel, would you talk a little bit more about the addiction piece of playing Lee, which, comes from Burroughs and as an artist, and just kind of that using that as a coping mechanism through life?
Right, yeah. I mean, Burroughs would say that he was always exploring and looking, and so therefore drugs were sort of a natural extension of that, but clearly, addiction is, again, more complicated than that.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't want to make it a sort of a drug piece.
Right.
We wanted it to be part of it because it clearly was very much part of his life. He certainly was a functioning addict. I mean, he lived till he was in his 90s, so he didn't. And we wanted to do it, do it justice. I think it was Giovanni, I think his name was, who was an addict, an ex-junkie, who we had a set, a really lovely, sensitive man who came and just walked me through the mechanics of it because I wanted to get that right. Yeah. I've had friends who've been addicts. I know kind of that thing. I know what it, I had a connection, touching point to it, and you just want to make it real, that's all you can do.